Hi, this is Isaac Carr with CCSK Law, here to give you an update on the PPP loans. That's the Paycheck Protection Program loans that are coming out underneath the stimulus package that was signed last week and that banks are getting ready to roll out. On April 3rd, banks will start paying out to small businesses and sole proprietorships, and then by April 10th, they will be giving money out to the self-employed and independent contractors that apply. All right, now in my previous videos, did my best to interpret as much as possible out of the text of the law that was passed underneath the CARES Act, which describes the payroll protection program. There's been a couple updates with the Treasury coming out, specifically giving direction on what some of those terms mean, how to apply, what you need to do, a little bit more tangibility once the Treasury Department got their hands on it. Two important updates that I wanted to give today. The first part is the way that the text read was that it was 1 year period prior to the date of the loan. That could be interpreted in a couple different ways. The way the Treasury has interpreted this, so banks will be following this, it's the average monthly payroll where most applicants will use the average monthly payroll for 2019, excluding costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. Once again, you cannot pay employees over $100,000 on an annualized basis when you apply for this. You can go up to that point, but not in excess of that $100,000 based on the text of the law. But the Treasury has given the direction that most applicants will use the average monthly payroll for 2019. So when the text of the law states 1 year period prior to the date of the loan, they're referring to 2019, it seems, and not a 12-month period prior to the date of the loan, like it had been interpreted, like I had interpreted previously, and I had heard a number of people who were coming from that direction. Again, this will be ultimately decided at your administrator's decision, but given this direction, I believe banks will be following that language to mean just submitting your taxes and your payroll for 2019. You might still want to have your year-to-date ready. I know that again, we're talking about the PPP loans. For the Small Business Administration Economic Injury Disaster loans, those you do submit your year-to-date. That does take into account more of a year-to-date. So keep that in mind that we're talking about the PPP loans here. And you cannot apply for both. You have to choose one or the other in the PPP sample application. And I'm going to put the link to that application in the comments below so that you can start filling that out for yourself. I'm going to send a link out for that. But in that application, it does ask whether you've already applied for these funds underneath the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. All right, next up, they provided clarification, some good clarification on the loan. The text of the law said up to 4% and up to 10 years. This is what the Treasury Department has said they've locked in. The loan, if it has not been forgiven, so any portion of the loan that's not forgiven. If you remember, the PPP is cut into 3 parts. The first one, how much can I qualify for? That's based off of payroll, looks like for 2019. Now, if you are a newer business or if you're seasonal, there's a couple of different avenues for you to go down. But for most applicants, how much do I qualify? It's going to be 2.5 times your monthly average of your 2019 payroll. The second step, after the money's been deposited in your account, you may spend it on qualified expenses. That's payroll, your rent and utilities, or mortgage. You must still protect your payroll, though. You must still have a 75% paid out to your employees. If you decrease it over 75%, what I mean by that is if you are paying your employees less than what you were paying them last quarter, 25% less than that, that's a problem. All right, and you have an 8-week period for the final step here. All right, so the next step is you've gotten this money in, it's a loan, and the loan terms are at a 0.5% fixed interest rate over a 2-year period, with payments deferred at 6 months, though interest will continue to accrue over that period. Really good terms for a loan. There's no prepayment penalty, so you can pay it off early if you do have money left over. However, it will be forgiven. That's the third part. First part, how much can I apply for? Second, what's qualified expenses that I can spend it on? Again, it's rent or mortgage, utilities, certain interest on debts. There are certain things that are qualified expenses that you can spend this on, but the primary one is payroll. Again, it's the payroll or the Paycheck Protection Program. They're there to protect your payroll. Finally, you move into the loan forgiveness. So we have this ton of money. I spend it on qualified expenses, but a certain amount will not or may be forgiven if within an 8-week period after you get that money, you spend it on the qualified expenses, but you cannot decrease your payroll more than that 75% I was just talking about. You must still pay your employees. If you choose to spend that money on rent instead of your employees, and you're taking out of your employees or the total number of employees or the total amount of salary that they're getting or their wages compared to that last quarter, then that portion will remain as a loan, which again, at 0.5% interest, that's going to be tough to beat in any circumstance. 0.5% interest over a 2-year period is a really good. There's no collateral. There's no personal guarantee. This is going to be a great thing, even if it remains on as a loan. But again, they're going to give that forgiveness if you pay it out to your employees over that 8-week period after you get the money. And the point is that they want this, the main driver behind all this, and it really makes sense when you know the main driver is for unemployment to remain low. This is a policy choice that the federal government wants to make sure that employment rates still look good even through this crisis. So they came up with this, and when you think about it, you say, oh, well, that's why it's based off of just payroll on terms of how much I qualify for. That's why a certain amount won't be forgiven if I don't pay my employees. Again, they are helping out businesses, but it's not so much that you've been economically injured as they want to just make sure that their unemployment rates still look good. All right. So when you know it in that context, some of the decisions that they made here make more sense. Now, this is if your payroll looks good. If your payroll doesn't look very good for 2019, you might be better off going with the Small Business Administration Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Again, you need to choose between the two of them, but that SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, you can get up to a $10,000 grant just from the application on that, which there are more steps to apply for it. It is a little bit more complicated, but it is something you can apply for. They have streamlined the process some through the online application that the SBA, you do apply for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan straight through the SBA, while the PPP loans are applied through a bank or what they call an SBA lender, which normally is a bank. So most of it's going to be run through the banks or your federal credit union. It must be FDIC insured. And so technically any bank can really do this, but the ones who are set up for SBA are going to be in a better position to get these funds out. So once again, that's the details with regard to understanding this PPP loan. I've given you some of the updates based off of what the Treasury has given to us. And make sure if you are a small business or a sole proprietor that you get your information in by April 3rd to your lender to be able to do this. And again, I'm going to put in the comments a link to the PPP application form that gives you exactly what you need to be filling out and what you need to be submitting to be able to get approved for these loans, so you can be prepped and ready. And then again, for if you're an independent contractor or a qualified self-employed individual, those will be by April 10th. So they've cut it into those two different parts. All right. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment to this video, or feel free to send me an email, isaac@ccsklaw.com. Isaac is spelled ISAAC at ccsklaw.com. Or feel free to check out my blog, and I'll put that in the comments as well. I will keep you updated here at CCSK Law. We are dedicated to making sure that you're up to date with everything that's going on with our government. We are going to continue updates with regard to Indiana as well. So Indiana hasn't come out and said how they're going to spend that extra $2 billion surplus. But Governor Holcomb said that that money is for purposes like this, which means that once the federal government has kind of said where they're going to be pushing this money, such as the Payroll Protection Program, Indiana will come back in and fill in those gaps where they need. So there might still be more money available, and more updates will be coming soon. And here at CCSK Law, we're dedicated to giving those updates and staying on top of this with the most recent that we have available. All right, I will talk to you all again soon.